The West Bank has a port. They can import and export. Israel gave them a group.
We want peace more than any other people. We pray for peace, yearn for peace, dream about peace.
If you take away the Soviet Union and its chief proxy, the PLO, international terrorism would collapse.
Really, how do we ensure that these weapons of destruction, these missiles, these chemical weapons, the nuclear program that is fast accelerating in Iraq, that these do not pose a threat in the aftermath of the crisis? So I wrote a book in 1995, and I said that if the West doesn't wake up to the suicidal nature of militant Islam, the next thing you'll see is the militant Islam is bringing down the World Trade Center.
גם אני חושב שהמחשבות והרעיונות שאפשר להמשיך ולהחזיק תחת כיבוש, זה תחת כיבוש. אז לא לאהוב את המילה, אבל מה שקורה זה תחת כיבוש. להחזיק 3.5 מיליון פלסטינים תחת כיבוש, לפי דעתי זה דבר גרוע. זה לא יכול להימשך ללא סוף.
How to channel that outrage, and that coincided with his rise to power.
In Netanyahu's conservative Likud party, there was concern about the growing tension in the crowds that night.
There were moments when Netanyahu was advised that, there are real nutcases in the national religious camp that we see that we need to calm down, even gesturally. Netanyahu never did that. He never did that, to his enormous discredit.
Rabin responded with his own rally. More than 100,000 supporters singing of peace. Then, as Rabin was leaving, that's him coming down the ramp. The man in the blue t-shirt approached. 3 shots from behind.
The Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, the architect of the Middle East peace process, has been assassinated.
The assassin, a right-wing Israeli Jew, Yigal Amir.
Truly shocking news from the Middle East tonight. Israel's Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin has been assassinated.
Outside the hospital, the crowd began to chant, "Bibi is a murderer." The sign says, "Bibi, Rabin's blood is on your hands."
It was just after the biggest peace rally in Tel Aviv.
Rabin's widow blamed Netanyahu for contributing to her husband's death.
The assassination of Yitzhak Rabin has also produced shock in the Palestinian community.
And said so on worldwide television.
Your husband pointed the finger at Mr. Netanyahu and said, "You must stop this incitement."
Yeah.
To what extent do you blame Mr. Netanyahu and the Likud for what has happened?
I do blame them. In a rally in Kikar Zion in Jerusalem that showed him in the uniform of a Nazi. So Mr. Bibi Netanyahu, now he can say from here to eternity that he didn't support it and didn't agree with it, but he was there and he didn't stop it.
There is no question whatsoever that Saddam is seeking and is working and is advancing towards the development of nuclear weapons. No question whatsoever. If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region. Iraq, Iran, and Libya are racing to develop nuclear weapons. Obviously, we like to see a regime change, at least I would, in Iran, just as I would like to see in Iraq. The question now is a practical question. What is the best place to proceed? It's not a question of whether Iraq's regime should be taken out, but when should it be taken out?
Used to work for me, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, we're going to war with Iraq. Why? He said, I don't know. The memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
Nuclear scientist who was a key player in Iran's nuclear program killed in broad daylight. And tonight, the dangerous tension between the U.S. and Iran has ratcheted even higher. Iran pointing the finger squarely at the U.S. and our allies in Israel.
It looks like the race between Iranian officials trying to build their nuclear program and outside forces trying to stop it is getting more intense. An Iranian facility has been targeted for cyber attack, the second time it's happened in less than a year. That from the official in charge of defending Iran's nuclear sites.
World. And nothing could imperil our common future more than the arming of Iran with nuclear weapons. In the case of Iran's nuclear plans to build a bomb, this bomb has to be filled with enough enriched uranium. And Iran has to go through 3 stages. The first stage, they have to enrich enough low-enriched uranium. The second stage, they have to enrich enough medium-enriched uranium. And the third stage and final stage, they have to enrich enough high-enriched uranium for the first bomb. Where's Iran? Iran's completed.
He proceeded to depict Obama as the enabler of evil, specifically the regime in Iran, which he called the single greatest threat on earth. He equated the Ayatollahs with the Nazis.
But Iran's regime is not merely a Jewish problem, any more than the Nazi regime was merely a Jewish problem.
And he said the deal Obama is seeking with Iran to limit its nuclear program will only unleash the greatest danger imaginable.
The foremost sponsor of global terrorism could be weeks away from having enough enriched uranium for an entire arsenal of nuclear weapons, and this with full international legitimacy.
Netanyahu spoke as though the deal is already in place.
It doesn't block Iran's path to the bomb, it paves Iran's path to the bomb. Ladies and gentlemen, check your enthusiasm at the door. This deal doesn't make peace more likely by fueling Iran's aggressions with billions of dollars in sanctions relief. It makes war more likely. Just look at what Iran has done in the last 6 months alone, since the framework agreement was announced in Lausanne. Iran boosted its supply of devastating weapons to Syria. Iran sent more soldiers of its Revolutionary Guard into Syria. Iran sent thousands of Afghani and Pakistani Shia fighters to Syria. Iran did all this to prop up Assad's brutal regime. Iran also shipped tons of weapons and ammunition to the Houthis
all over the world, pulling the U.S. out of the Iran nuclear deal and imposing tough new sanctions on Iran instead. The president, in a speech seen here in the U.S. and carried live in Iran, calling the deal disastrous. America's allies have urged the president not to do this. They are reacting tonight, and so is Iran.
Major escalation in tensions between the U.S. and Iran. The top Iranian general has been killed in an airstrike while leaving the Baghdad airport. The Pentagon confirmed the U.S. military carried out the attack.
Just as Israel has the right of self-defense, the United States has exactly the same right. Qasem Soleimani is responsible for the death of American citizens and many other innocent people. He was planning more such attacks. President Trump deserves all the credit for acting swiftly, forcefully, decisively. Israel stands with the United States in its just struggle for peace, security, and self-defense.
More than 100 people have been killed and scores of others injured in 2 explosions in southeastern Iran, near the grave of a top Revolutionary Guards commander. State television says the blast occurred in quick succession in the city of Kerman during a ceremony to mark the anniversary of the killing of Qasem Soleimani. He was Iran's most powerful military commander and was killed in 2020 by a US airstrike in Iran.
Just consider the past 6 months alone. In December, as CNBC reported, Israeli-linked hackers took out nearly 70% of Iran's gas stations, causing chaos in that country. Then, in February, the New York Times reported that Israel carried out covert attacks on 2 major natural gas pipelines inside Iran, disrupting the flow of heat and cooking gas to provinces with millions of people.
Iranian state media says a suspected Israeli strike has destroyed an Iranian embassy building in the Syrian capital Damascus, with the senior commander in the powerful Iranian Revolutionary Guard among those killed. Israel hasn't commented on the incident. These are the latest pictures we have of the scene.
Well, first of all, it was the Israelis who started this by bombing the Iranian embassy in Damascus. The Iranians did not start this conflict that recently took place between April 1st and April 19th.
But they were there
Again,
with people from
Israelis.
Hezbollah, weren't they? So they were military leaders using the consulate to plan attacks on Israel with leaders of Hezbollah. I mean, that was why they were targeted.
Look, in international law and according to international norms, states don't attack the embassies of other states. This was considered to be a significant provocation.
Unless they're being used used as military bases, which it is believed, certainly Israel argues. No. I don't know, but it's certainly been argued by Israel that it was being used, part of this consular area was being used as a genuine military base, in which case it becomes a legitimate target if indeed they are meeting with Hezbollah to plan attacks on Israel, isn't it?
There's no evidence that it was being used as a military base. And the fact is that if the Israelis are going to hit the Iranian embassy, the end result is the Iranians are going to retaliate. And they did retaliate. Now, I want to say a few words about that retaliation. It's very important to understand that the Americans and the Iranians orchestrated the Iranian attack so that it would be a limited attack. It would do very little damage to Israel. And the reason this is the case is that neither the Iranians or the United States wanted this conflict. And it was the Israelis who, by attacking the Iranian embassy in Damascus, dragged the Americans and the Iranians into this conflict. And
Netanyahu wanted to provoke Iran. He wants to prolong this war as long as he can so that he can continue the slaughter of the Palestinian people. He knows very well that the first day of the end of this war, the last day of this war, will be the first day of the end of his political career. He knows he will go to jail because of 4 cases of corruption against him. He knows he will be investigated for the fact that he failed on the 7th of October, and now he's failing in this war. And this man wants to drag the whole Middle East into a terrible fight.